Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 9th episode of 2023. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast, and our gold sponsor, Nokia and Vetro. On Monday night in Washington, the House passed a 2-month extension to extend the FCC's authority to sell spectrum. This was passed unanimously, and the measure will still need to clear the Senate. Also on Monday, Vice President Harris traveled to South Carolina to provide an update on the progress of the administration on deploying high-speed broadband, especially fiber optics, and implementing the Affordability Connectivity Plan, our program as we call ACP. So the Vice President Harris highlighted that more than 24 million American households still don't have internet access, either because they can't afford the cost of high-speed internet or because they live in a community, often a rural community, where high-speed internet is just not available. She also said, let's be clear, in America, in the 21st century, every person, no matter where they live and no matter how much they earn, should have high-speed internet. It's simply a necessity. Also, for emphasis, affordability and accessibility, both, because one doesn't work without the other. And then she ended with, so today we have begun to build and infrastructure in more than 300 communities to construct thousands of miles of fiber optic lines that will deliver high-speed internet. So it's really great to see that the White House fully understands how critical fiber broadband is to our nation as we work to close the digital equity gap. That brings us to today's Fiber for Breakfast session with Michael Mori, the President and CEO of Bluebird Networks, to discuss how best practices deliver top net promoter scores for Bluebird Network. But before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers from the team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thank you, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us this morning. Before I go over a few logistical items, we'd like to thank the platinum sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco, and our gold sponsors, Nokia and Vetro. Now, if everyone would just keep in mind that you're all in listen mode only. To ask a question, you can just type it into the question box on the control panel on the right side of your screen. We'll host a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's webinar. The presentation is being recorded and will be available to members only on FBA's website. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. If you take a minute to do that, we truly appreciate your input. I'll pass it back to Gary now to introduce our panelist and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish, and good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber for Breakfast, we heard from Pat Malign, the President and CEO of Allo Communications, on the servant leadership culture that he's created at his company and how fiber is changing the lives of the youth of Lincoln, Nebraska. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our session is with Mike Mori, the President and CEO of Bluebird Network, to discuss how best practices deliver top net promoter scores for Bluebird Network. Michael has served as President and CEO of Bluebird Network since 2012, with more than 40 years of telecommunications experience. Michael is a long-standing industry leader, holding positions as President and CEO of Vocteus, the Senior Vice President at Nuvox, Regional Vice President of Electric Lightwave, and has held various managed positions within his 13 years at AT&T. He has a BS and an MBA while attending the University of Southern California. So welcome, Michael. And for our audience, please type in your questions and comments as we go and work them into the Q&A at the end. With that, I'll turn things over to Michael.
Good morning, Gary. Thank you very much for having me. By the way, my old board for Voxitas used to hate the name because it was so easy to mispronounce, and that's the most creative pronunciation I have ever heard. So thank you for that, and thank you for reinforcing my board who just hated that name. But let's jump into it. This net promoter score thing is a pretty interesting subject because it really talks about how successful you are in terms of your customers, and it makes a huge difference in the success of your company. But before we do that, let's talk about Bluebird Network. Let's change the page, Trish. Gary's already talked about me, so let's go to the next one. Let's talk about Bluebird Network. Trish? Okay, so Bluebird Network started way back in 1999, and some of you may remember a company called Missouri Network Alliance, which is how we started in Missouri. And we are basically a company that focuses on fiber connectivity, really four things: fiber connectivity, internet delivered across that fiber, co-location in two facilities, one in the Quad Cities and one down in Springfield, Missouri, and connectivity to the cloud. I know it says private cloud services, but it's really connectivity to the cloud. We let the other folks do the private cloud services. If you had a map up here, you see that we have 11,000 miles of fiber optic network all over the Midwest. We're really in 11 state area, centered on Missouri and Illinois and the surrounding states. So, Iowa, Indiana, Kansas, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Tennessee. We're all over in the Midwest. And I like to say that we're the biggest fiber company in the Midwest that you've never heard of, because the companies we focus on are other fiber carriers, wireless carriers, managed service providers, government, schools, hospitals, banks, and medium and large businesses. So the people that we talk to, we're not doing big publicity. It's mostly one-to-one contact. So the people who work with us and the people that are in those categories that I just talked about really know who Bluebird Network is. So let's turn to the next page, Trish, and let's talk a little bit about our history and how we got from 1999, when we first started, to 11,200 route miles of fiber nowadays. So we started as Missouri Network Alliance, I mentioned. We then started a company in Illinois called Illinois Network Alliance, which was Bluebird, or Missouri Network Alliance, was part of other rural telephone companies in Illinois that decided they were going to put together a statewide network. Both Missouri Network Alliance and Illinois Network Alliance set up their network based on the concept that they were buying connections to long distance calls or tandem services from AT&T and paying them a bunch of money. And then in 1995, this thing called the internet, Gary, I don't know if you've heard of that, but this thing called the internet came out, and all these rural telephone companies had to start buying connections to the internet to St. Louis, to Kansas City, to Chicago from AT&T as well. And they looked at each other and they said, if we go build a fiber network from our rural telephone companies in Missouri to St. Louis and Kansas City, and from our rural telephone companies in Illinois to St. Louis and to Chicago, we could take the money we're paying to AT&T and pay for that fiber network. So that's what they did, and that's how we got these two companies, Illinois Network Alliance and Missouri Network Alliance, that got set up. And then in 2011, there was this other company called Bluebird Media that was building fiber in the middle of Missouri. And they got together with Missouri Network Alliance, and they merged to create Bluebird Network. They were only about 18 million in revenue then, about 26 employees. They hired me. Since we had 10% ownership of Illinois Network Alliance, I pulled all of them together. We created a single brand across these companies. I actually was the CEO of two companies for quite some time. I was the CEO of Illinois Network Alliance, and I was the CEO of Missouri Network Alliance under the brand name Bluebird Network. Most people had no idea they were dealing with two separate companies. We bought a data center, an underground data center in Springfield, Missouri in 2014. Macquarie Infrastructure, the largest owner of infrastructure like electricity and sewers and water and fiber in the world, bought Bluebird in 2019. They also bought Unity's Midwest Fiber Network and merged that with Bluebird. And after they merged that with Bluebird, we then went ahead and purchased the remaining interest in Illinois Network Alliance. So now that this thing that was two separate companies plus Illinois Network Alliance plus the data center down in Springfield, Missouri, now was under one company. We also bought Colo Hub Data Center, which was in the Quad Cities, Iowa/Illinois, for those of you who know that area, and changed the name to the Bluebird Quad Cities Data Center. And so that takes us from the beginning with no fiber, no revenue, no employees, to nowadays where we have 11,200 route miles of fiber, 80 million of revenue, and 120 employees. So that's kind of our journey. But let's go to the next page and talk about the things that we do well. And because the kind of the elevator speech when somebody talks to me says, Michael, what do you do? We do 4 things and 4 things only. We do fiber connectivity, where we connect locations. We do co-location, where we help people store their critical data. We connect people from their sites to the cloud via private connections or public connections when we provide what I think is the best and highest quality internet access in the Midwest. We have leading, we lead the industry with lowest jitter, lowest latency, lowest packet loss anywhere in the Midwest. So if you're one of those companies that is just kind of shaking your head and going, man, oh man, this just isn't working for me. This internet is just, I don't know why it doesn't work so well. That's the kind of person that you need to call us. And if you think about these 4 products that we focus on are all focused around where people store their critical data. That's the big subject that people talk about now. Am I going to keep my critical data that makes my business run on my premise? And if so, I need to connect that to my other offices. That's where fiber connectivity comes in. Am I going to locate that in a data center? Okay, so there's the co-location. Am I going to put it in the cloud? If I'm going to put it in the cloud, I have to either have access to it via the public internet or via private connections. And all of those choices drive to our product set. And hopefully, for redundancy purposes, you're choosing more than 1 location, hopefully 3. So they may be all in your 3 different home offices. It might be in a home office, it might be in a data center, it might be in the cloud. But that's a really big subject that people are focusing on. It's driving a lot of decisions nowadays, and that's what our products are centered around. Trish, if you go to the next page, you'll see that this kind of products that we have has a real impact on the marketplace in a number of ways. One, when we bring fiber into a market, we enable competition, and where the local telephone companies, the local cable companies don't have much competition, when Bluebird comes in, all of a sudden the products get better, the prices drop, the speed of delivery increases. So we may not always get the customer, but it's always a win for the people in the markets that we enter. And the other thing is quality service. Local telephone companies, local cable companies aren't known for great service. When we come in, all of a sudden, we set the bar higher. And when we talk about Net Promoter Scores later, you'll see that our customers get it. Just a few things in terms of how we've been successful in the marketplace. We are the largest provider of connectivity to rural telephone companies in the Missouri and Illinois area, so we've had a super impact there. We're the 2nd largest provider of internet to K through 12 schools in Missouri. We're a major provider to all of the wireless carriers in the Midwest, and many more areas we've had an impact. But I think that probably gives you a feeling for who Bluebird is, and how we have an impact on the marketplace. And Gary, that brings us to kind of the best practices of a high-performing team. So I don't know if you want me to go through this now, or you want to talk about this, Gary, or because that's the next subject of the cast.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and go through the deck, and then we'll get to the Q&A. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a really great reputation in the marketplace, and people ask me all the time, Michael, how is it that Bluebird is different than the other folks out there? What makes you guys different? And I always say it's our people. And I know that's kind of a, everybody says things like that. Oh, it's always our people, right? But it's not just it's your people, but it's how you interact with your people, how you lead your people. And the most important thing of driving a high-performing team, in my opinion, is listening and communicating to your team. If you don't get that right, nothing else works. And then the second thing is trusting your team so that you share responsibilities and you push those responsibilities out as far as you possibly can. I haven't talked to too many people that love being in a company run by a micromanager. And so what we try to do is we try to empower our folks throughout the company, almost as if this is their company. And if something needs to be done, there's one real easy way to get in trouble at Bluebird. That's by not taking ownership and not making a decision, and not owning something, and like waiting for, hey, Michael, what should I do here? Like, I would rather have you do something different than I would have done, but do it and take responsibility than to, slow down and worry about what's Michael going to say. Because what I support is you taking action and doing what you think is right. And then, okay, so you set this environment, but you got to make sure that they understand that they are valued, whether it's through recognition, whether it's through awards, whether it's just going up and remembering their name and talking to them in the hallways, leaving your door open. Super important. And then the last thing that I think is best practice is consistency. Consistency. People who change this way one day, this way another, this way a third, I hate those kinds of environments. So I like things to be consistent. And I like to make sure that our goals and values are clearly defined and understood. You go around Bluebird, and I'm going to ask Trish, I think this is the next page. I'm going to ask you to go to the next page. You're going to see, I'm sitting in a random office in our facilities in the Quad Cities in Iowa, in Davenport, Iowa. And on the desk of this place that I'm sitting is this Bluebird Network values sheet. And it talks about, what values that we hold here at Bluebird. One is to wow our customer. One is to own it. Wowing our customer is we meet or exceed our customer needs for both our internal and external customers. Owning it means we hold ourselves and each other accountable to do what's right. We adapt creatively, which is we quickly and creatively adapt to solve problems. And 4, we care deeply. We care deeply about our customers, team members, communities, and environment. And we don't just say these things, we mean it and we live it. And when you take these values throughout your company and in your interactions with your customers, I have had times when a salesperson or a engineer or an operations person has said to me, Michael, I don't think we should do that because it doesn't follow our company's values and culture. And I love it when somebody says that, because then I'll stop and I go, you're right. If we did that, it wouldn't be following this. We're not perfect. We've made mistakes that didn't follow these cultures, but in our company, people are quick to point it out. And it's a huge, huge differentiator in the marketplace. And I think it is what leads to our success with our customers. And I know this topic today, I know we're talking about net promoter scores. So Tricia, let's go to the next slide. So business to business and consumer to business are two separate types of net promoter scores. And I want to talk, a lot of people, they throw around this term NPS all the time. And at Bluebird, when we talk about net promoter score, we're talking about what is a customer, how do they score us when we ask them the question, how likely are you to recommend Bluebird Network to a friend or a colleague on a scale of 1 to 10? And if they put 9 or 10, then we consider them a promoter, and that's a plus. If they put 7 or 8, we consider them passive. Most people would think 7 or 8 is a great score, but no, 7 or 8, we call it passive. And then 1 through 6, we consider them a detractor. And a lot of people would say 6 is more than half, it's a good score. Bluebird's not looking for good, we're looking for great. So this kind of scoring for net promoter scores is used throughout the country. So if you look at the industries, business to business, and we'll show a consumer to business slide in a second, you'll see that the scores for telecommunications are lower, but you'll notice against healthcare, financials, IT, wholesale, telecommunications at the bottom of the net promoter scores. Somehow in our industry, we find out how to do it worse than other people. But by following the things that we do here at Bluebird, Tricia, why don't you push that score and show what Bluebird Network's a net promoter score is? we've come in at the top of the pile. Bluebird's Net Promoter Score comes in at 70. This is a huge number. We're super proud of it, and we watch this. We score this. We run these scores 2 times a year. We send out questionnaires to get our Net Promoter Scores, and this is super important to us. I think it's one of the big reasons why Bluebird continues to grow consistently, why we have super low customer churn, and why our employees love working here. Now, I think if we want to finish up this deck, Gary, let's go to the next slide, Tricia, and let's look at the scores in the business to consumer area. And please note, telecom has managed to be negative. That the local telephone companies, local cable companies, we just aren't getting it. I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not to keep doing what we're doing. And then let me just finish up real quick, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Gary, with the next page, just to tell you where's Bluebird going from here. And Tricia, if you could change the page, that'd be great. So what Bluebird's trying to do from here, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We build about 500 miles of fiber each year. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to dig in, get deeper into the markets we are in our 11 states, and we're going to edge out further into the surrounding states. We're going to keep doing strategic builds. A few of them that we currently have going on, we're doing a river crossing, Mississippi river crossing right now for Facebook. They're doing networks across the country, so we're doing that for them. We're doing new expansion into some we'll call mid-sized cities in Iowa and Illinois, Waterloo, Dixon, DeKalb, and Aurora. And we just recently did a little tuck-in acquisition with Missouri Telecom. But Bluebird's not going out to like buy 3 different companies like Zayo is. We're looking to just do the steady, constant growth, because by doing that, we can continue to wow our customers and hold our values dear. And I think we'll continue to be successful. So I'll turn it back over to you, Gary.
Hey, Michael. Yeah, first of all, congratulations. 70 in this world is awesome. So on that, I have a whole bunch of questions that came in as people registered.
Okay.
And so one is, when you look at, do you guys look at the transactional NPS for like new connects, truck rolls, calls to care, and et cetera?
We don't. It's a great idea, Gary. And our team is looking at layering that in, because that helps you understand not just Bluebird and our image as a whole. You get to find out like how are technicians doing, how is our customer service doing, how are our sales people doing. So there are different ways to do that, and we are exploring that, but we haven't implemented it yet. But it's a great idea and something that we do plan to do.
I think you froze on me a little bit, Michael.
Oh, I'm
hopefully
sorry.
You can still hear me. So one of the other questions that came out that I thought was really good is, how do you set the NPS metrics? How do you measure them, and how do you tie them into your NPS goals, into individual goals versus team goals?
So I think I explained earlier how we do our metrics. We do them twice a year, and we do them on the 0 to 10, and I kind of went through that in my deck. We don't right now tie them into our KPIs, but we do tie them into our quarterly awards. So we have quarterly, each of the executives in each of the different departments has what we call a going beyond expectation awards. And those, when you are recognized in that, we always, as part of our all hands meeting, we bring people together, big video calls, announce the winners. We recognize which of the company values contributed to you winning the award. So I don't actually do it as part of bonuses. We do it more about recognition. But I will tell you, it is working.
Well, great. Obviously, that's working really well. So what about the best customer experience practices to keep your subscribers from switching to competitor, especially after like a promo price ends and so forth? I mean, we see so much promos in our space, and consumers now are trained to basically keep gaming the system to get the promo deals. So how do you guys keep your churn down? What is your churn? How do you keep it down?
Well, our churn is 0.8% per month, including returns. I mean, so that's an all-in number, and that industry standard is lucky to get to 1% per month. So we have really low churn. How do we beat that? So this is really what you just described as a transactional environment, okay? And since our target is not small businesses and it's not residential, right? Most people are more focused on the quality than the price. Why would you fix something that's not broken? Especially when chances are what you had before was broken. So we don't find ourselves in a situation where we are fighting the most recent promo. And maybe it's a sign of our market, maybe it's a sign of our success, but we really don't face that.
So your customers are more mission critical, and so they're looking for basically having the quality of service, the quality of experience is paramount to them.
Yep,
so
that's right. We do reach out to them at the end of their terms and talk to them about what their current needs are. We always do that. But you're right. It's the mission critical nature of it. We just don't see our customers jumping for the latest deal.
When I had Matt from Calix on, and he was talking about NPS and about how you have to keep wowing your customers. So you set the bar, but the bar, once they get comfortable at wowing them in one way, you have to keep elevating that wow. And so what is it that are you able to do that I mean, you can't just keep doing what you're doing even if it's great, because people get too comfortable.
This kind of rolls into a question about trends, right? I mean, so this is about where is the market going, and I always like to talk about this has been happening for a long time, and it continues to happen, and it is the biggest impact on that kind of just keep doing what you're doing thing, is that people are demanding more bandwidth at lower costs at an increasing pace over time, and they are looking for more storage at lower cost at an increasing pace as well. And those two things are driving what's going on in the network. So we are continually driving the size and capabilities of our network faster than our customers want it. And so that's where we really see the kind of change in customers. They always want you to be outstanding with what you have. They always want you to care about them. They always want you to respond quickly. They always want you to build them correctly. We've already got those things right. So for us, the thing that's changing is the market trends and making sure we're on top of those.
Well, fantastic, Michael. Hey, we really appreciate you sharing the success that you and Bluebird are having and what you're doing to serve the communities of the Midwest. So thank you for that. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We're going to be discussing not your grandpa's cable company, how today's MSOs are moving forward with fiber, with Jamie Linderman, the research manager and principal analyst of broadband access at Omdia, a research firm that we use quite often. So you're not going to want to miss that. So please dial in next Wednesday, and we'll see what the cable companies are doing to transform their businesses to fiber. So everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your week.